Hi, Mike.
Hey, Kristen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well.
Dale.
Good morning.
Hi. Hey, Tracy.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good.
All right. So I think I have one more minute until noon my time. What do you guys have?
Right. It's only 11, Kristen. Come
Oh,
on.
all right. So come back in an hour then, Dale. All right. I'm having a bit of a sun situation. So I've rearranged my whole workspace and I cannot get away from it. So if you see me shifting, that's legitimately why. So, all right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Kristen Battaglia, Director of Strategic Partnerships with Wrenchway. And we have a couple announcements before we dig into this great topic that's very close to my heart. So announcement number one, if you haven't downloaded our Wrenchway app, please do so and then do the featured challenge because there's lots of cool stuff that you can win, such as a Sonic tool set, some stickers, toolbox stickers, and just some cool swag. So make sure you do that. Our second announcement is if you're not already on School Connect, please check it out on our website. School Connect, if you don't know, it's a really easy way. It's free for both industry and schools to connect. So schools post what they may need, donations, advisory committee members, shops can reply directly on that platform. And also shops can also say, hey, I'll give a shop tour. I'd like to come and speak to your class. So it's a really easy way for schools and industry to connect. And then our last announcement, if you were with us this morning, you heard Mark Wilson, our CEO, announce that we're coming out with a top schools platform in 2022. So what that is going to be is for post-secondary schools to be able to highlight all their goodness that they have and to hopefully use it as a recruiting tool, because we all know that recruitment is a major issue for a lot of our tech colleges. So it'll be a one-stop shop for students and instructors and industry to be able to talk to each other, and hopefully top shops will check it out and top schools, and we're excited about that platform coming out in 2022. So if you're here, then you probably know that there is a technician shortage, and then you probably already know or want to learn more about how to connect with schools. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and what an industry partnership with schools can look like and maybe should look like. Then we're also going to talk a lot about our schools properly preparing students for industry. It kind of drives me nuts that we expect entry-level technicians to be ready on day one. Honestly, I don't know of I'm not ready for my new job on day one. So why do we expect entry-level techs to be? So we're going to jump right into that conversation, and I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, but I also want to hear, what was your very first car? I think that I steal that always from my buddy, George Ahrens, but I think it's a really cool topic because it's kind of a connector for all of us, right? So Mike, how about you take it away for us?
Mike Goley, I'm the president of the ASC Education Foundation. I've been with ASC for more than 25 years. Before that, I grew up in the business. My dad owned a repair shop in San Antonio. So my first car was a 1960 El Camino, and it was sweet. 3-speed, column shift, 235 6-cylinder, which I got to rebuild after it left me stranded on the side of the road, stripped the timing gears, but that's another story. Happy to be here.
That sounds like a cool car, huh? But you
Oh, it
wish
was
you still
sweet.
had it.
Wish I still had it. Absolutely.
For sure, for sure. Tracy, you're next to me, so I'm going to go right over to you.
Okay. I'm Tracy Miller. I'm the department chair for the automotive program at Tarrant County College. My first car was a 1982 Toyota Hilux pickup.
All right, all right. Is that a big one, or is it one of those tiny ones?
It was small compared to what we have today.
Oh, and you're just sucking up to Dale over here too, aren't you, with the Toyota? I get it.
Yeah.
Dale, go ahead.
My name is Dale Frommer. I'm with Gulf States Toyota. I'm Senior Manager of Technical Training and Certified Collision. I've been with Gulf States Toyota since 2000, and prior to that, I was in retail for about 11 years. and prior to that, graduate of UTI in Phoenix, Arizona, back when UTI only had 2 campuses nationwide. So that's going back quite a few years, about over 30 years in the business. So, my first car was not a Toyota. It was a 72 Ford Torino, and I had a lot of fun in that car. It was really pretty clean. But a car that heavy just doesn't move that fast, and it doesn't stop very fast either. So, but I despite my best efforts, it was never really a great hot rod. So unlike Mike wanting his car back, I'm good to go, but I don't have my Torino any longer. So, but it was fun, a lot of fun years.
Yeah, everybody always remembers their first car, right? So, okay, so let's just jump right in. Our topic is, are schools properly preparing students to enter into either, a lot of times it can be apprenticeships, a lot of times it's full-time employment. But so I'm gonna toss this over to Dale, since he is industry. And how about you tell us what you think, Dale? And then, are there gaps in how we can improve as well?
This is something that we work on quite a bit. We have a group within Gulf States Toyota that works on workforce development opportunities, and over the last few years we've spent a lot of time on what I would say the supply side of the issue, right, which is the school systems and preparing a larger pool of willing candidates. If you only address one side of it, we're going to have gaps. Right. And the gaps that are created by then what's the demand side and the employer side? Kristen, we talked a few days ago, I had mentioned that, oftentimes we refer to the OE relationship with the school, or the OE responsibility and the educator's responsibility. And what we oftentimes leave out is the employer's responsibility. And they really are, if there's a gap, that really is the gap. What's the employer's responsibility? Instead of just being willing recipients of those people who are willing to go do the job, what are they actually doing to get involved? I see a lot of great actions by the OEs, and in our case, our region with the OE, and a lot of great actions from the school. But if there was a gap, that would probably be one of the largest.
Yeah, and I love that when you brought that up. So there's really 3 entities, right? So it's the student, the industry, and the employer. And I think that that really drills more down to the local level, right? And that's kind of what we always talk about at Wrenchway, is local solution, national problem. Again, I stole it from George, but that really is the key. And so the more the employer can get involved at the local level, the better the students will have. The expectations will be set on both sides, right? So I know, Mike, you're dying to jump in there, so I'm gonna get to you in a second, but I want to hear Tracy a little bit too. How does that feel when you hear that maybe schools aren't properly preparing students? Because I know you do a great job, Tracy. So what's your opinion on it?
So obviously we do, there are obviously areas to improve, but I tell my students this all the time, that they start in the automotive program, and after their first semester, I ask them to think back to their first day and what they learned. And then I ask them after the end of their first year to look back at their first day and what they learned. And at the very end, I ask them to look back where they were at the end of their first year and what they learned. And almost all of them, at some point, they're saying, well, I've got some of this figured out. And then I like to tell them that, I graduated and I thought I had all the tools that I would need to succeed on the job. And then looking at myself 5 years later and looking back at that myself when I graduated, it's a constant learning. I don't think, the students graduate and they know absolutely everything that they're going to need to know. And I think that that's where, especially like T10 excels, is that we're partnering the students with mentors. And so they're really getting almost constant learning 6 days a week. But then after they graduate, there's somebody for them to lean on in the shop that knows what's going on, because they're not going to know everything. They're not going to know everything when they graduate. They're not going to know everything 5 years in. They're not going to know everything 10 years in. So having those relationships in the shop for our graduates to lean on is really beneficial. And I think that's, when I started in the shop, I had a great group of guys that really helped me become the technician that I am today. And I see some students really struggle, and it's because they don't have help in the real world. I can try and prepare a student for the real world all I want, but a school cannot 100% do that.
Excellent point. You are so true. And I want to come back to that with the mentoring piece too, but I know Mike has a bunch to say about schools preparing for entry-level work.
Well, first of all, I got to say that my hat is off to Tracy and all the other instructors, because what they do is A, it ain't easy, and B, it's so critical for our industry. And so anything that anybody does to support a program, boy, focus on that instructor and talk to that instructor. And what can we do to help you? What can we help you with so that you can help those students? Because that's so critical. But it's absolutely true. What I always say is, and there's no substitute for classroom and lab instruction. You've got to get the knowledge up here. If you don't understand a 4-stroke cycle, you can't really work on. I mean, you work on cars, but if you don't understand the how, the why, the theory behind it, you'll never make a great technician. And we want all these students to become great technicians. But then once you've got the knowledge up here, you got to transfer it out here. And the only way to transfer it out here is to actually work in the shop. And so really 2 things. One is getting that hands-on experience, the technical skills, getting to practice what you learned in school in a lab. That's critical. But the other part of it is working alongside other technicians, learning the importance of being on time, how to respect the customer's property, the business's property, learning how to work with coworkers and supervisors and customers, just learning what it is to have a job and be a professional. That's something else that students really, you can simulate it in school, but you can't really learn it until you're on the job. So one of the things that we're really focused on at the Education Foundation is trying to help businesses partner with schools so we can get the students do the work in the classroom, but also be hired and get a job part-time and get some real work experience in the business so you can become familiar what it's really like to be in the business and figure out, hey, is this really for me? Because if you figure out early on, I love this, then great. That's just going to get you really tied that much more closely to the industry. And if you're like, this is not really for me, well, maybe there's another job, maybe the parts counter or service writer or some other job in the facility might be right for you. In any case, having that fundamental education that an automotive collision or truck program gives you, you can't beat that because there's tons of career opportunities in the industry. Having that technical knowledge is only going to benefit you. But again, we're always going to talk about, can we get the students, how can we get the students out of the classroom and put them to work while they're still in school, because that's the time they really need to learn what it's like to really be in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Dale, did you want to jump in? Did you have another comment?
Well, just a quick follow-up comment to my previous comment. When it comes to the gaps with the training of the individual student and the preparation for the job, what role does the dealer play, right? Besides being the recipient of the employee, they play a greater role. And I don't know that it's well understood that how important their role is. The school, through advisory committees, right, seeks that feedback from the employer so that they understand, are they using the right equipment? Are they teaching things that are applicable today, right? Has the industry changed? Have the vehicles changed? Have the service processes changed? So when an employer may find disappointment in the leveling up of a technician or the preparedness of a student, then why is that the case, right? When they're given opportunity to actually give that feedback. So if they're not taking advantage of that by sitting on their high school and college advisory committees and making sure that they're feeding that information back to say, hey, you're missing the mark, that's one piece. The other part is, do they see themselves, the employers see themselves as a continuance of the educational process? So when these individuals are in school, are they willing to employ them at a young age so that they can have some industry experience and then bring that experience back to the classroom and work with somebody like Tracy and his team to say, hey, when I was at the dealership or at the shop the other day, I was well prepared to do this work. I want to know more, right? And so I think that that spurs a lot more effective learning when they have that. And then again, when they're at the dealer too, are they assigned to somebody that can help them expand that learning, right? Okay, so here's what you learned in class. Let me help you apply that on a vehicle here in the shop. And really seeing themselves not just as the employer, but part of the education and training process. So.
And Tracy, do you want to maybe touch upon how you rely on your advisory committee and how important and essential it is to the success of your program?
Yeah, we have 2 advisory meetings a year. We take what we are told in those meetings and we adapt what we are doing. And I tell people this a lot, it's great to hear that I'm doing a good job. It's better to hear what I'm missing the mark on, because if all I ever hear is you're doing a great job, then nothing is going to change. People need to go into advisory meetings and tell the schools where there are gaps in learning, where they are not hitting the mark, because yeah, it's great to hear you're doing a great job every day, but you need that criticism and the feedback to actually make improvements.
Yeah, I love that, because I've sat in on committee meetings and nobody says a word. And I'm just like, huh?
Yeah.
There's no program that's perfect. So, and I'm not a technical person, so I don't have a whole lot of feedback, input, but literally I've sat in committee meetings, and Mike, I'm sure you have too, and nobody says anything. And it's like, you're here to better the program, so you better speak up.
Yeah, the role of the employer at the advisory committee, I think, sometimes we don't communicate that well. Sometimes they just think they're to rubber stamp or give the instructor an attaboy, and those are all nice. Everybody likes an attaboy, but really and truly, it's to give feedback to the school, and the audience is not just the instructors, it's the administrators, it's the CTE directors, other people who come because, if you say, well, I had some of the students in the shop the other day, they didn't understand road force balancing. Well, why is that? Because our program doesn't have a road force tire balancer. Well, why don't we have that? Well, because it's not in the budget. Well, let's have a discussion about that and figure out how we can afford that sort of equipment so that our students come out better prepared. And that's exactly what Tracy was talking about. Are you keeping up with the technology? So it really is incumbent. And I don't know how you draw that out other than whoever's chairing the meeting has really got to call on those employers. So they need to come ready to share, hey, here's what we're seeing a lot more in our shops. This is what students need to be prepared on. But that feedback is so critical.
Yeah. And you know what, Mike, you brought up a good point too. The administrators are there. And I'm not sure if everybody recognizes that or understands that, right? It's required as a part of your advisory committee to have an administrator. And usually it's the dean or, somebody very, very high up. And sometimes it's multiple administrators that have to be there in order for you to have your committee. And the more industry they see, the more it impacts and is beneficial to an instructor or school's program.
Absolutely.
Dale, you want to add anything to it?
I just think it's a great conversation, and it's such a critical thing. We've done this so many times with both high schools and colleges, where we talk to the instructor, right? And even talk to dealers that say, I called the instructor. Why don't you call the superintendent? You know what I mean? If you want help from your school, and if you want your school to perform in a different way, don't call the instructor and then have the instructor tell you that, I don't have a road force balancer. Great example, Mike, right? The tools and equipment to do the job. There may be a reason why they don't. As a business in the community of that school, you have an obligation to make sure that they're meeting your needs, and start at the superintendent. That's, when we go to help the school, we're going to start with the president of the college. We're going to start with the superintendent of the school district, and we're going to have that conversation. I was actually at a high school in the San Antonio area, great school, good participation from the school, but they did have an equipment issue. We set a meeting with the superintendent, and we set it intentionally at the school campus, not at the administrative office. The administrator, the superintendent, had been there for 10 years and hadn't walked into that shop. And about 3 weeks later, I got an email from the instructor and said, thank you for the visit. I have new equipment on the way. All it was just a tour. And from an advising standpoint, pointing out the importance of having new equipment. everything that was there was very well kept, but it was outdated. So it looked new to the casual observer, but they didn't have the advice and the input from industry to say, hey, this isn't meeting the standards that we expect today. So they said, okay, we'll make some changes. It was as simple as that. When we don't engage, the change doesn't occur, and then we continue to be disappointed with what we get from the school.
Yeah, I have a local committee. I'm on a collision program at MATA, Monroe Advanced Technical Academy here. And because the advisory committee didn't really step in early enough, they actually cut the required hours for students. And that's not what we want, right?
Yeah.
We want more hours built in, not to go from a 2-year program to a 1-year program. And that's pretty scary. And then the advisory committee sitting around and is like, oh no, why did this happen? You know, and now this instructor is expected to teach 2 years worth in 1 year. It can't happen. It just can't happen. So you have to be involved with your local advisory committee, 100%. Tracy, so you have to keep up with the advisory committee chat. Tell us a little bit about what your advisory committee looks like, though, because is it it's just all Dale, or is it, you know, other industry? Who makes up your advisory committee?
We actually have an advisory committee for each of the programs, automotive programs on our campus. So collision, diesel, automotive service, and T10 each have their own advisory, and each advisory, although some of them share members, most of them are independent of each other. The T10 advisory committee, Dale is on, as well as several other people from Toyota and Gulf States, and then all of the dealers in our area. Our automotive service advisory committee is made up of parts suppliers, independent shop owners, dealership partners, just kind of across the board, almost anybody. We have actually some retired administrators from Tarrant County College on our advisory committee for automotive service, because they kind of know what strings to pull when they need to be pulled. So they can be very useful. And then the same for diesel and collision. Diesel is just getting off the ground, but we've had an advisory committee for diesel meat, and it is across the board, shop owners, people in industry that are providing feedback on what to teach, what they're seeing, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's important to have shop owners, independent shop owners and dealers, but also having parts suppliers and folks like that, because you're going to be a pipeline for the industry as a whole. So
absolutely. So okay, so our shop's expecting too much then?
I don't know that, and I'll venture a guess. I don't know that they're expecting too much. I think maybe we've got some misaligned expectations. The student is expecting, some students are expecting to come out, make $100,000 a year the first year, and all I do is work a scan tool all day long, and so clearly that's not reality. Sadly, the reality in some shops is, we'll come here and the first tools you get are a broom and a mop, which I can relate to from personal experience, and everybody needs to learn how to work a broom and a mop. But if you're chained to the lube rack for the first 6 months or the first 2 years, and then you wonder why the guy quit or the gal quit and never came back to our industry, I mean, we're eating our young when we do that. So really, to have a good set of shared expectations is number one. Hire the students while they're still in school, and so you can mentor them as they come along and figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are. And when they've got a weakness, again, give feedback to the instructor. Hey, the student doesn't seem to understand, the alignment seems to mystify them. Well, maybe they didn't learn geometry, and toe out and on turns doesn't make sense to them, so maybe they just need to focus some more back in the classroom. But you need that feedback, but the students need to be doing that so that they skill up while they're still in school, so that when they come out, they know what they're expected to do. They know what their level of competence is, and the employer's got a more reasonable expectation of what that person's level of competence is. And the other part, of course, we hadn't talked a whole lot about, is the mentor piece of the puzzle, which is allowing the student to work alongside a experienced technician, so that number one, you know, from a safety standpoint, you don't want the student to get injured. You don't want anybody else in the shop to get injured. Likewise, you don't want to send the customer out with loose lug nuts. So somebody's there, you know, keeping an eye on things to make sure the job's done right and the customer's car is getting taken care of. But at the same time, the student is learning and getting a chance to practice their practical skills, make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. By golly, who among us didn't make mistakes and doesn't still make mistakes? But mentoring them along the way so you can skill them up. You know, I hear sometimes, oh, I hired a student from this program and they didn't know anything. And that just slays me, because number one, I'm sure that they didn't know anything isn't true. But B, if they didn't know everything that you wanted them to know, what were you doing to solve that problem while they were still in school, by giving feedback to the program and hiring that student and getting them some practical experience while they were still in school? So those, you know, we want a quick fix. We want to snap our fingers and have somebody else do it for us. And, you know, in the automotive industry, we know if we don't do it for ourselves, it ain't going to get done. So this is one more case where we've got to dive in, partner with the schools, help those students get their skills up to speed. And the only one who's going to solve this problem is us. But the good news is we've got folks like Wrenchwave, we've got folks like the Foundation, we've got folks like Gulf States, we've got great programs like T10, you know, all the different schools around the country. We've got a lot of assets at our disposal. If we work together, and that's, you know, I'll preach that all the live long day. If we work together, we can solve the technician shortage, but everybody's got to work together. Nobody else is going to grow the technicians for you and magically deliver them to your doorstep.
Yeah, yeah. Dale, what do you think? You think, and I do want to come back to mentors, but I want to hear Dale's opinion of, do you think shops, you know, are
asking too much?
Yeah. Coming from, you know, Toyota, let's hear it.
Yeah, I certainly think that in some cases, the expectations are quite lofty, right? And I don't think the expectations are such that they truly believe that a student at, you know, 18, 19, 20 years old at the very oldest, right, coming out of a good tech program, right, is going to have all of the solutions. And we have technicians that have 20 years experience, and yes, they're very, very good, right? They're not invincible, right? They don't have all the answers all the time. You know, I would say with 5 years to 10 years experience, a technician gets to be at that extremely high A level, right? If the right technician. Some of them never progress to an A level. So to expect somebody to come out at 18 or 19, 20 years old and have all of this capability already built in it's not a realistic expectation. So yeah, I think the expectations are lofty. I think those employers who do it well and understand that, hey, they're going to come out with the ability to learn. If they come out with no other ability, they come up with the ability to learn, then we'll be providing the resources. With at Toyota, we call it technical information system with GIS, all of the resources they needed to have from an information standpoint, wiring diagrams, repair manuals. So they come out as a person who's willing to and capable of doing the research and learning. Yeah, they can solve a lot of problems, but they still need mentorship as they mature in the system. And those employers that understand that and provide that pathway for them are those that generally don't have those complaints that say, hey, this technician didn't know how to do something, right? They're generally the ones who say, you know what, they've had great success. And I think those people that are probably tuned in today probably fall into that category. The fact that they're tuned in today means that they're interested in learning more, which means they probably do more already. We need them to be more outspoken to try to maybe cross-pollinate some of those employers who are not.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And when I was at Skills, I always used to say, you can't teach soft skills, right? It's the technical hard skills that you can train in the shop, but showing up on time, being respectful, looking them in the eye, you know, those are things to look for, and the ability to want to learn, you know, and then you train the technical side.
Right. One quick add, Christine, you just spurred a thought, and Mike had touched on this a little bit too, about how important it is to employ the technician before maybe they further their education beyond high school, because that gives both the employer and the student an opportunity to explore one another, right? Is this something that the student really is interested in doing? Or is it a thought? Hey, I might like to work on cars. I think cars are cool. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good technician or like being a technician, right? So go experience being a technician to see if it really is for you. And then conversely too, for the employer to actually know that person up front when they're in high school, Employment Express maintenance, right? And doing some of the light maintenance repair, giving them an opportunity to experience the culture and the employer experience that individual. Then if you decide that this is somebody who could actually make it long-term, get in 100% behind whatever pathway it is they want to go. Don't talk them into or out of anything. If they want to pursue college, be there 100% behind them and help them through that process, employ them while they're in school and then employ them after school. If you're really in it, you're going to get the best result. If you just want to be a willing recipient of all these people coming out of these programs, you're not a good participant.
Yeah, yeah. And Tracy, how much do you love the shops that show up on graduation day?
Oh, they're all great. I don't think I have a single shop in my area right now, with the help of lots of people from Gulf states, that is not willingly participating in our program. So they are fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And so how, as an instructor, do you try and match your students? Does that whole mentoring come into play, whether if you have an apprenticeship program or, you're looking at independent versus dealership? How does an instructor, because I know you play a really big role in that and where they're placed.
So the biggest factor in how we place students is locality. So if the student is having to drive across town for a job, it's less likely that they will stay in that job. So we try to get them as close to home as possible. From there, we really kind of let the shop foreman decide who will be the best mentor. Most of the time it works out. We've had a couple of instances where it didn't work out. Some of the best dealers that handle it actually let the students kind of float around until they find a good match. When they find a good match, that match usually sticks, and the student and the mentor usually end up becoming friends, and becomes a much longer relationship. What I like to tell people is, as much as I would love it if everybody on earth would get along with one another, that's never going to be the case, even with the most well-intentioned of people. So sometimes people are just going to butt heads, and when that happens, it might not be either party's fault. We just need to remedy the situation by moving to a different mentor. Typically, our worst case scenario is we move a student dealerships or employers. Occasionally we lose that student, and typically when we lose students in that fashion, they leave the industry and we never see them again. So letting a student kind of float and find a good pick really works well. But generally, service managers, shop foremen are pretty good at spotting problems pretty quickly. So, and that's usually when my phone starts ringing and I have to go make a visit ASAP. So.
And Mike, you guys have you're mentoring, right?
Yeah. So we've got some mentoring training that we make available to anybody and everybody that wants to participate, and we're actually updating and refreshing that information to make it a little bit more 21st century and easier for folks to access. But even, talking about the, students getting to know a potential employer, employers getting to know potential hires. And we talked about the importance of participating in your advisory committee. There's a lot of other activities, frankly, that employers can and should be doing, getting involved at their local school. Coming and giving a talk about here's what we do in our business. Here's the different sorts of positions that we have. This is the kind of money that folks make. Here are the working conditions, because you look in a lot of shops and dealerships today, and holy cow, their floors are a lot cleaner than my floors. So conditions have changed and situations have changed. Offer shop tours, allow instructors to bring the whole class out to see your facility, and you give a tour and you explain what the business is like. You can go and volunteer. Maybe the school has an after school car club, and maybe you can volunteer to work alongside some of the students in the car club. And when you're doing that, you're also getting to know the students, and you're starting to cherry pick the ones that really show the curiosity, really show the aptitude. You can do mock interviews. Hey, yeah, it's not a mock interview. I'm really getting to know you. You can do job shadowing. Job shadowing is a great way to bring the students in. They get to know a little bit about you and the people that work in your facility. And it's that first opportunity for maybe a mentor, a potential mentor student match to be made, that they can connect a little bit while the student is there job shadowing. So there's a lot of different ways that you can connect with the students while they're still in school and get to know, oh, that's the one that maybe we would like to hire. Let's see if we can get them in an interview or a job shadow, or et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. There's a school near me that does a fundraiser for their automotive program, and it's a car show, classic car shows.
There you
And
go.
I think that that's such a great way. You're raising money. Everybody loves older cars, or just any car, right? And we all have them. I don't, but you guys do. And so show them off and raise some money for your local program, because they all do need to fundraise too.
Absolutely.
Dale, you want to talk about mentoring and I think what it looks like at Gulf States or for some of your dealers?
Yeah, sure. You know, through the T10 program, when the student is in the 2-year T10 program, depends on the program structure, but they're going to be in the dealership during some times, right? Some of it's at 8 weeks at the school, 8 weeks at the dealership if it's a remote school or they serve remote communities. And then some if it's a large metro community like Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston or something like that, it might be a continuous program where they're going to school part-time all the time and going to work part-time all the time. And so when the student is at the dealership, they're assigned to a mentor, and that mentor is there to support, right? Early stages of mentorship is a little bit more challenging, more time consuming for the mentor. But it's important that they're there. Part of mentorship a lot of times is not working on cars. Where do I park? What door do I come in? Where are my uniforms? You know, I mean, what time is lunch, right?
Where are the tools? All that.
Yeah, where are the tools, right? What's expected of me versus what's expected of my employer, right? And how do I move up? And sometimes that information is best shared from a peer, which is a mentor, instead of the manager. So it's really, really critical that it's done well. We have some very, very good mentors, and then we have some that are new and learning. And we have done mentorship classes in the past. And I would say that probably is a shortfall for us, or a weakness for us, that we don't do more mentor training. But it's a critical part of the process, and certainly for success in the T10 program, mentorship is very important.
Yeah. So Mike, I want to talk to you, because going back to our schools properly preparing students, ASE has something called standards out there that you guys work really hard at and include industry. So can you maybe explain how that whole process works for everybody? I know it pretty well, but I'm not sure everybody understands how these standards are developed.
Sure, and it's our bread and butter, and I think a lot of people may be familiar with the name NATEF. That was what our name was before we became the Education Foundation, and we've been around doing this since the 1980s. And the basic idea is, if you're going to teach somebody how to work on brakes, well, what does that include? Drum brakes, disc brakes, turning rotors? What all am I going to need? Diagnosing ABS? What am I going to need to know to do? So what the standards do essentially is say there are basic quality ingredients of, if you're going to teach automotive or truck repair or collision repair, the basic things that you ought to include. And so one of them is, we say you got to teach this stuff, and kind of when I say this stuff, where does that list come from? Well, we have a big meeting of folks from all across the industry, the manufacturers, the educators, the aftermarket, get everybody together. And of course, some people want to lean a little bit this way and some people want to lean a little bit that way. And so we kind of meet in the middle and say, as a kind of stand, we can all agree they need to know how to work on disc brakes. Well, what does that include? You know, oh, I need to know how to take apart a caliper and, you know, da 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 da. So the standards spell out, you know, to some degree of granularity, here's what you ought to be teaching. And we actually prioritize, these are the highest priority, most important things. And these are lesser priority. If you have extra time and whatnot, you can teach those. And so we require schools, if they want to be accredited, teach like 90% of the most important stuff and 75% of the intermediate important stuff and 50% of the lowest important stuff. And then of course, if you have extra time or your advisory committee says, oh, by the way, we also really want you to focus on this other thing, then you can tweak your program and still stay within the guidelines of the standards. And so now when the administrator says, well, what's the basis for your automotive program? Why are we spending tax dollars on this? We say, these are industry standards, and students who come out of this program are being taught the stuff that'll give them a job either locally, or if they want to move across the country, this is the same thing that, you know, is being worked on in shops from Maine to Florida to California. So standards gives you that baseline for this is what ought to be taught. Here's the tools and equipment that you need to teach it. And then we add other things on top of it, like, oh, by the way, administration's got to be involved. Oh, by the way, there's got to be an adequate budget. Oh, by the way, you have to have an advisory committee and they need to be involved in this, 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 and this. So we look at it as not just a paperwork exercise. We look at it as a way to look and see, hey, am I doing the best I can for my students? Because they're only going to be with me for a couple of years and they'll never get those couple of years of their lives back if I don't do a good job for them. So am I doing the best job that I can? Am I pulling in all the resources that I need to pull in? Am I getting the support from administration? And sometimes what we find is just like the example I was given a minute ago, administration is clueless and they're like, justify to me why you need this budget to do this. And if the standards say you need this tools and equipment, and my local employers all say, yeah, they need to know how to do this so that when the students come out of the program and I hire them, they're ready to be productive on day one, then that's a justification to administration. Yes, we need to spend those dollars. So we think it's a good way to raise the quality of programs all across the country. And we only have an hour, so gosh, I could go on forever.
Well, no, that's okay. But also, you know, it's a lot of, it's not a lot of work, but it isn't I'm trying to say this in a really great way, Mike, but it's work on the instructor's part too, to follow these standards, right, Tracy? So it is important, and industry has created the standards. It's not like it's just ASE out there saying these are the standards. It's literally industry from all over the country. But Tracy, you know, it's pretty important, right?
Yes. So, I mean, I keep speaking to T10, but I think we have something like 300 lab sheets that we cover over the 2-year period. Each of those lab sheets has a correlation to the ASE Education Foundation standards. And it's noted on spreadsheets where that lab sheet fits in with each one of when we were developing the T10 program at Tarrant County College, somebody much smarter than I at T10 showed me a quick way to calculate whether or not I was hitting my percentages correctly. So all these spreadsheets are built so that somebody from ASE can come in and hopefully quickly assess if we are hitting the standards correctly or not. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask Dale this. Do your dealers know about the ASE standards? And one thing that I believe is if the employer, if local industry knew about these standards, then maybe the expectations wouldn't be as high as they are. And so I'm punting that to Dale, but then also to Mike, how can we create that easy button that employers can just find really quickly what is expected of a student who's in an MLR program or what have you. But Dale, does your local dealer understand these standards?
The best way I can answer the question is that at every opportunity to speak about the topic, we take that opportunity, right? And to summarize it a little bit, what we do is because they understand the value of ASE certification and they know what it means to have an ASE certified technician, right? They've proven by knowledge, at least, right, that they know something more than another, right? And I think that most employers would realize that, hey, if I've employed ASE certified technicians in the past, and also those who couldn't pass ASEs or refused to take them, there's a difference in the aggregate average of those technicians, right? So when we bring up the point that part of ASE accreditation or ASE Education Foundation accreditation requires that the instructor be ASE certified in the areas in which he or she teaches, that's just one standard, right? That makes sense to them, right? So that's one way that we bridge that conversation to say, is your school ASE accredited? And if they're not, why not? And are you participating in getting them there? And we've gone as far as to meet with state Congress at Mississippi. Most recently, a couple of years ago, we worked with the state, and they had a relatively low number of ASE accredited programs in their state, down in the teens, if I'm not mistaken. At this time, I think there are over 50 programs are ASE accredited between high schools and colleges. That was not an easy thing, and that was extremely challenging for the state. It was costly. It was challenging for some of their associates, but it made a better program, right? And then getting back to this conversation of the technician that I receive as an employer meets my needs, then you're getting much closer to that, because the ASE accreditation program standards are based on industry input. ASE doesn't come up with this stuff on their own, decide, hey, this is what we should be teaching. They say to the employers, what should these schools be teaching? You tell us, we'll hold them accountable to that, right? But then as employers, we need to then hold our community educators accountable to being accredited. So we take advantage of every opportunity to speak about it. It's a little bit much for many employers to absorb. They've got a lot of other priorities and a lot of other interests, right, that are swimming in their heads, right? So it's an area where you can't go into a lot of depth, but if you can summarize it, they can come around pretty quickly and understand that. The other piece is, how do we help from an OE perspective, help them in their own community? I was looking at chat as we were talking, and there was somebody on chat said, I don't have an automotive program in my community. What do I do? I think it's a wonderful question. The answer to that question is work with the superintendent at your local school district. If you're an independent, get other independents and even dealers on board and get some support from the OE. Those programs will serve needs of all of you, not just the dealerships or one, right? So get them involved, get ASE involved. They can help. Even if they don't have a program, are they serving the needs of the community? But that's where we can help. And going back to your specific question, we can help in the area of ASE accreditation too. If a school is not ASE accredited, they can be a very good program. It's no different than you can be a very good tech and not be ASE certified. But if you are, why are you not? If you are a good educator and you have a good education program, why are you not ASE accredited? That's like being a good tech and being knowledgeable and not going and proving it by just going and taking the exam and passing the test. There's really not a reason or an excuse. And if it's too much work, are you really a good program or a good tech? I'll leave it at that.
So Mike, let's say that industry wants to see these standards, where would they go to look for them?
So hope you don't get a cramp typing this out. It's www.aseeducationfoundation.org. So all together, no spaces. Or if you use Google ASE Education, you'll probably stumble across us. So we've got a site, and there's 3 buttons at the top of the page that I'll just call everybody's attention to. One is find a program. So if you want to know where are the schools in my, oh, I'm an employer, you convince me I need to get involved with the programs in my neighborhood, the high schools, colleges, whatever. Where are the schools that are close to me? There's a locator in there. You can filter by the type of program. If you're looking for T10 programs, you can filter by T10 or any type of program, high school or college program, et cetera, et cetera. Put in your zip code and a radius, and poof, there's the list of the schools. There's the name of the main contact at the school, and a phone number, and you can reach out and start a conversation. The second one is find a rep. So we've got about 24 what we call field managers around the country, which is a network of folks that work for us and with us that represent the foundation, talk about accreditation, try to help schools, try to help programs. You know, we're not doing it, you know, to up our sales or anything else. We're doing it we're a nonprofit that's created by the industry to try to help schools turn out the very best product, because God knows we need technicians. So our field managers, if you're in a city where, hey, you know, we don't have any schools near us, what can we do to get started? I'd say call my state or my local field manager and talk to them and see if they can help you. They may know somebody at the State Department of Education or somebody that make a connection with the superintendent. Of course, it carries more water if you're a business owner in that community, but we can kind of help you, give you some of the language and maybe give you some connections. And then the third button is a new program that we just launched, and it's called Adopt a School. Now, this is our generic version of Adopt a School. Toyota has their own Adopt a School program. If you're a Toyota dealer and you're a T10 school, you've probably already been working all the things that we've got in our toolkit. But for other employers that are like, oh, Mike, you listed all these different things that we could do to support schools, to get to know students, to hire students, to help with the program. How does that all work? You know, and how much time does it take? And can I start small and maybe work my way up? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. How do I get started? So we've got a button up there that says Adopt a School, and you click on that Adopt a School, and basically it lays out the rationale for why growing your own is the best way to solve your technician shortage. Takes time, but absolutely you'll have the best outcome. And the way to do that is to partner with your local schools. So you give me your name and your email address so I can follow up with you later on, and then click the submit button, and you immediately get access to all of our toolkit resources. There's best practices, there's examples, there's suggestions for simple things that you can do, like show up for an advisory committee meeting, all the way up to train your employees to be mentors, hire students, put them to work, all those things from soup to nuts. We want to give, you know, hey, I'm a businessman, I'm busy running my business, I'm good at fixing cars. I'm not an expert at education or how to get new technicians started or anything else. We want to come alongside you and help you work with your schools, because they are the experts, and working together, you guys are the local solution to the national problem.
Mm-hmm. And what if they reach out to their local school and really don't get any response from the instructor?
As George would say, there are some instructors who've retired and forgot to tell anybody.
Somebody, yes. Another
so,
Georgism, yeah.
But I got to tell you, if I'm a taxpayer in the community, you know, the next phone call I'm making is to the principal, and the next phone call I'm making after that is to the superintendent. And you know, if I'm a well-known business in the community, I bet they're going to take my phone call, and then I'm going to ask, you know, I'm trying to help this instructor, and understand, you know, don't call an instructor in the afternoon and then be calling the superintendent in the afternoon, you know, in the morning or something. Give them a little time to respond, because they are busy folks. But you know, if you've made repeated calls or reached out repeatedly and an instructor is not being responsive, I'm questioning what is going on there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So accountability, you know, in schools need your help, but you know, God forbid we have schools that are running hobby shops, because that's what the standards exist to prevent, is students wasting their time in hobby shops and then coming out of a program ill prepared for a job. We want students to graduate from programs that are ready to go to work, and that benefits, you know, tax base, the community, it's obviously benefits the student, benefits everyone.
You know, a quick follow-up to Mike's comment about being a taxpayer, and just so everyone understands, he's talking about not just you as a personal individual property owner in that community, but you as a business owner in that community are contributing to the tax base. And whether the contribution is large or small, you're still making a contribution that proportionally to your business is as important as any other business, right? So get the support of other automotive business owners in your community and rally together and take your concerns to the superintendent or even to the state capitol if you have to get the support in your local community. You know, I saw in the Q&A section, Victor put a comment in there about how there was an automotive program in his community and they closed the automotive program. One of my concerns when that happens is, where was the industry? And I don't mean, when I say industry, I don't mean General Motors and Toyota and Ford. I mean the business owners in that community.
Local industry,
at a
right?
local level, local industry, right? The employers saying, hey, as an industry, we're not receiving the support from our community that we think is necessary. And you need to remember that you have a very large and loud voice when exercised appropriately. So how active are you? And if you're not leaving your dealership or you're not leaving your independent place of business to exercise that voice publicly, you know, working with us local legislator or even state legislature to get what you need, then you're missing an opportunity. So it's very important that you do that. I think a lot of people don't realize that they have a voice. One other quick comment to follow up on that too. The school districts, the progressive school districts that we've worked with, the really good school districts, are as interested in meeting the needs of the community as you are, and then meeting your needs, right? So when they can say, hey, we're working with local businesses and we have an automotive program, and look at these young people who are going on to great careers in the automotive industry as technicians, as service writers, as sales associates, whatever the case may be. That's an opportunity for them to showcase what the school district is doing to support the community. They love that stuff. So don't be afraid or bashful of asking for their support. By supporting you, they can reflect on that to their constituent community and say, hey, look at what your school district is doing. It's great stuff. So don't let them close your automotive program. If they do, it's not their fault.
And if it's on the agenda for the school board, you're about a year or 2 years too late. You needed to be involved and headed off at the pass a long time ago. If it's already at the school board level, that ship has probably already sailed.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, but you can't wait for it to show up on the agenda and then say, oh, we're going to rally the troops. You know, you got to be there every day helping the school out so it never gets to that point.
A save, if timely, is a possibility. If it's too late, it's going to be difficult, and getting
Hard
it
to
back
do.
will be 10 times as hard.
Yep.
So if you have an automotive program in your community and you're not participating, step one today is figure out how you participate.
Yeah. Like that collision program that I talked about, they're probably never going to go back to a 2-year program.
Yeah.
And that's really, really sad. And we have a strong presence on that advisory board, but it's just somebody at the top who thinks that this is a way to cut costs and whatever their reasons are. And it's hard to get it back.
And there's no opposition, Kristen. That's the other part too. There's no opposing view that says this is the wrong thing to do and we're going to stand up for what needs to be done. If that opposition doesn't occur, reducing it to a 1-year program is just the beginning.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So I think we have a couple minutes, and I think what we kind of all have established is we all play a role in this, right? It's not our schools preparing our students properly. No, are we preparing our students and our entry-level techs? So Tracy, you have any last thoughts or words of wisdom that you can offer our audience?
I would just say, remember that it's a top-down approach. Everybody, all the way up from Mike down to me, kind of in the trenches trying to get students trained. It takes a lot of people to get where we want to be. And just to add to Dale and Mike's point about being taxpayers, the ASE standards kind of help keep schools accountable. So they're accountable to the community to teach students what the industry wants them to know. So if they aren't learning something, get involved with the school, get involved with ASE, just get involved. Yeah.
And there are a lot of great programs out there that aren't accredited, but they're making progress, they're producing quality students, and that's just as important. And Mike, you have any other words?
We'd love to help those programs get accredited, because we think they'd only be better, and
Yep.
it would be a benefit to them and to their students. The only other thing I've got, and I mean, if you've been around this industry for a while, you've heard a lot of belly aching, about, you name it, whatever the subject is. There's lots of complaints, and I'm the first to admit there's a lot of things in this industry that need to be improved. But I got to tell you, cursing the darkness doesn't help one lick. The only way it's ever going to get any better is if we all work together and try to help each other. And I think that's, that's what drives us. It's what drives organizations like Wrenchway. I think, just on a personal level, people like Dale and Tracy, they get up and go to work and do their job every day. And it's not all for the paycheck. It's because what we're involved in is an industry that is bigger than all of us, and think of all the wonderful people that have been involved with it and benefited over the years, and taking care of our customers. They can go to work, they can take their kids to school, they can go on vacations, all the wonderful things that we do by virtue of the fact that we keep America's cars rolling. So let's don't curse the darkness. Let's light a candle, work together, and make things better.
You're choking. I'm getting choked up over here, Mike. My gosh. Thank you. I love that. I love that. Promote positivity, right?
Amen.
Absolutely. All right, Dale, you're up. Give us some words of wisdom.
That was a hard one to follow, right?
I know.
Yeah, that was good stuff. I wanted to comment. Again, I've been kind of watching over here at chat, and Victor did make a comment about the program and about how he tried to save the program. What's interesting about that, Victor, is that I think we have some really outstanding instructors out there across the country. Many, many outstanding instructors. Some of them eventually become defeated because of the lack of participation from the community as a whole, from an education standpoint and from an employer standpoint. And then you get these really outstanding instructors like Victor stuck in the middle, who are trying to save their own program, and they don't have the support. And Victor was explaining that he did have some support from local dealers and local shop owners, and it still wasn't enough. I think the important thing to remember is that as Mike was saying earlier, as constituents or as community taxpayers, are we putting the burden on the instructor to save the program, or are we stepping up way bigger than that, way above that, and taking this to a whole new level? And if we're not doing that, if we're not having our voice heard at a higher level, it's going to be tough for even the best of instructors to try to save your program. Again, I said earlier on in the comments that I talk to a lot of people and they say, hey, I reached out to my local school instructor. Wonderful. I think it's great that you reached out to him or her and talked to them about their program. That's great. They need the support. But one of the best ways to provide them the support is to call the superintendent and make sure you have a conversation with the superintendent. Whether there's an issue in your community or not, even if it's just a call and say, thank you for what we're getting from the school, make sure you're making that connection. The superintendents of these school districts need to know how important the automotive programs are to your success. So go to your advisory meetings. That's great. Know your instructor. That's great. Hire from those programs. That's great. Support students when they want to get a higher education. That's great. Make sure the people in government know what you want, right? Don't be silent, and don't work at the instructor level. Go higher than that. So.
Well, I'm excited and inspired. So I want to thank you all. And again, you can go to the ASC Education Foundation. You can go to our School Connect. You can reach out to any of us. I can put you in contact with Dale or Tracy or Mike if you have any other questions for them as well. So I think we're at 103, so we nailed it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Kristen.
Take care.